It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old Salty Dog, as your host and the captain of our pirate ship, and back from assignment, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, sir. Glad to have you. Or good afternoon, and we'll tell you where Ted is in just a moment. But good to see you, sir. The ship was a bit rudderless.
John, missed you last week.
Absolutely. Yeah. I missed you too, man.
We're still steering the ship.
Absolutely.
We're still steering the ship through the European waters.
Absolutely. Well, he's going to tell you all about that in just a minute. But before we get into it, I want to wish everybody happy President's Day, or as some parts of the country, happy mattress, get a great deal on a mattress day. You know, it seems like, I don't know why that is, but it seems like mattresses are always on sale on President's Day. But I don't want to
They'll probably give you double off. They'll probably give you double off this year for Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, I love the fact that they call it just President's Day, although certainly it centers around Lincoln's birthday and George Washington and all of that. But it just gives you an opportunity to celebrate the great presidents, and some not so great, of your choice that we've had over the years and that we currently have. So I like the fact that it's somewhat generic.
It is. You know, if you go back to the founders, you know, they're worried about having a king. And of course, the left and the apoplectic people think that Trump's acting like a king. You know, he's just undifferent than anybody else. But you know what? He's going to have to abide by the rules and get out after the next election.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, you've been off on an assignment, as I've been saying, and you've been in Italy, and I know you had some business and some pleasure. And so let's just start with the business, because I think the pleasure has to do with how long you've been married, doesn't it?
It sure does. I went to Bellagio, Italy by myself at Lake Como, and it was a think tank. And it was funny because it was the Aspen Institute and the Rockefeller Society or Foundation, and they're both very liberal groups. And for me to be invited was, you know, kind of an enigma to me because they know my conservative stance. And when we were there, they said everybody here was chosen for a specific person. So I figured, or for a specific reason. And so I figured, well, they must know where I stand, and I tend to speak out or speak my mind. And it was interesting because there were a lot of people that had TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and they were still reeling from the teardown of USAID. But as we talked, we found we had more in common. And the purpose of that meeting was reimagining foreign assistance. And my whole thing when I got into Congress is, number one, I wanted to get rid of all foreign aid. But as I learned, there were some valuable programs that we wanted to move countries from aid to trade, to, you know, just create alliances around the world. And then to go into specific areas like our rare earth minerals and agriculture, things like that, to where we can build up a strong trade economy between nations. And if you're trading between nations in general, you tend to stay out of conflicts. So the goal of that was to reimagine foreign assistance in a good way and not bring back these terrible programs that we had. And they're going to be a lot smaller, but they're going to be more effective and more efficient. So overall, I think it was a good thing, and I had to push back on a lot of things I wanted to do. Just said, no, you can't do that. And so I assume that's why they invited me. And then we went on to Verano, Italy, for our 51st anniversary. I've been blessed. And we're in a town that has a Roman amphitheater, you know, the gladiator days. It is complete, and it was started pretty much at the beginning of the AD, like AD1, right in the very beginnings, right at 2,000 years old. And John, what amazes me? I don't think they had. I don't think they had inspectors, and I don't think they had building departments. They just did the work. And these things, the walls of these buildings are as straight today as I assume they were back then. Just amazing craftsmanship.
Yeah,
But,
well,
we've lost that, I think, over the years.
aside from the fact that aliens might have built it, and I'm not talking about illegal aliens, but I think there's two factors actually involved in that, Ted. I do think there's pride in workmanship and craftsmen, no doubt about it. And maybe they didn't have inspectors, but if the thing collapsed, there was probably only one punishment.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. You talk about that. I mean, this building, it's just a marvel. I mean, it still is absolutely gorgeous on the outside, the most part of it. But then in today's society, you're starting to see around town, not on that building, but people spraying the graffiti, because they've got nothing better to do. They have no clue of how they got to this point in society or in history. And they're just tearing down that had been built and stood for over 2,000 years. And it's a loss of culture is what it is, and a loss of respect for culture. It's interesting. We went to a winery yesterday. It was built in the 1700s. Beautiful place. And they have to handpick the grapes. And I asked them, do you use domestic help or immigrant? And that was mostly immigrant. And then the conversation went, and this was from some of the people, not the tour guide, but some of the people around there said the immigrants are coming from certain countries and they're becoming a big, big problem because they're not working into the system. They just think they can be renegades here. And I think we see that all over the world. So it's not just something in America where you need ICE to show up. It's here too. They just haven't reached that point in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're glad to have the captain back because, this calls to educate, motivate, and activate people. This pirate ship depends on a good captain, and it also depends on a good crew, an absolutely good crew. And if you want to be a part of this crew to move this message, keep this message out there and expand this message, call Freddie. Look at that number that you'll see periodically on your screen. Call Freddie, become part of our team, become part of the crew. There's plenty of room on the pirate ship, but we're all a bunch of individuals trying to learn to row in the same direction to save America.
That's right. And come one, come all, spread our word wide with your network. The important thing is you're going to bring some videos up here, John. And this is just a misunderstanding of how America was formed and what it was built on. And the leaders at the media and the left and the people outside of America are promoting, like the AOC, you're going to play her video. These are the people they're promoting to be in government high levels, possibly president, God forbid. And then you're going to play that one up with Kamala Harris. And I can't, Carol and I were talking about that today. I'm just so thankful she wasn't our president, or Hillary Clinton. You got a thing on her. And if we don't remember where we came from and what our values and our founding principles were, this country will go away. I mean, we might as well just start spraying graffiti everywhere and watch the demise of America. This is where things are tough, and we have to come together as Americans and build on that common theme that unites us all and not divides us. So I'll turn it back to you.
Well, what Ted's talking about is happening in Munich, and it may have concluded. I know it's been going on over the weekend and starting late last week. It's the Munich Summit. It's a global security summit that has been happening basically for about 60 years now, I think.
Right.
And I don't know if they've had it every single year, but it's pretty much an annual event. So I'm going to use a template for this story, an AP story. Here's what the headline said. U.S. lawmakers limp to global security summit trailed by political crisis at home. Let me read the first part of this article. It says, dozens of U.S. lawmakers were trying to make their way this weekend to the Munich Security Conference to assure allies of America's reliability. Ted, is that where we are right now, to assuring our allies, in this case, Europeans, that America is reliable? Really? Is that where we are?
Yeah, I mean, the media would have you believe that. And there's a lot of European countries that feel that way too, unfortunately. And I guess there is some cause of that because there is a shakeup of a lot. You heard me talk about it a lot. There's a tectonic um, um, chasm going on in world powers and the peace dividend that we've had since World War II. And Trump has called it out. You know, when his first administration, he challenged NATO, said, "You're not living up to your commitment." Absolutely right. NATO has put in, and they've caught up their dues, and it's made that organization stronger. Had that organization been stronger, I argue that would Putin have gone into Ukraine? And chances are he probably wouldn't have. And so, you know, the whole European thing is, oh, you know, oh, poor us, America's being hard on us. But this is time to be hard because there's so many things. Like I said, the tectonic shifts in world power are happening right here with China and Russia. And that was something at that summit. You know, I brought up China, and the majority of the people didn't think China was a threat. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There was a guy that represented the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and he says, you're absolutely right. And I named out, you know, my 5 top existential threats: debt in China, immigration without assimilation. And he goes, China and our debt are our biggest threats. And so, you know, for the other people not to be up to speed on that kind of shows you how oystered they are. They're just kind of tunnel vision on their subjects. But when you get back to the Munich Security Conference, that has been going on for over 60 years, pretty much continuous. I'm sure there was a pause at COVID somehow. I'm sure everybody videoed in. But there was tough talk in there, and they're all upset because Trump's called them out. And then he's had the tariffs and said that you're going to have to defend yourself. So it's rocked the boat there. But it was a wake-up call, too, because they have to realize that we can't protect everybody in the NATO alliance, that they have to do their own work. And they're just kind of, they have hurt feelings on that. And of course, Vance went over there and gave them, I don't think it was a very professional talk. It could have been done better, but it had to be, you know, it had to be done. And Rubio did pretty much the same thing. And when he left, it was one of those things, they weren't feeling the love. Well, shame on them. You know, this is a tough world, and there's tough love too that is probably just as effective. And I think what you'll look back over this is a day of a reset to where they'll come out of this. The thing that I've heard, and I heard this at the conference I was at, was the Munich, because I asked people, they had gone to that several times. They said it's kind of just gone into a whining session, and there's not really a lot of policy. All these people show up, and there's all these committee hearings, and we know you can just, you know, get inundated with all these good intentions, but nothing gets done. And I think that's where the Munich Security Council is today. It's become a Security Council of no bite. It's kind of like the UN. So it's time to reset that too and get back to some basics.
Well, Ted, you know, I'm glad to have you back for multiple reasons, but you certainly sparked things in me. So this next
That's
example
my job,
I'm
John.
going to give you shows how you know, spark me, but at the same time, it also defines that some of us are sicker than others. So when I started thinking about this, you know, questioning America's reliability, for some reason I got this image popped in my head, Ted, that you got Uncle Sam walking into a strip club making it rain, just throwing money like this, you know, and everything. And so they get used to old Uncle Sam coming in every night and just throwing it, making it rain. He may even have one of them dollar bill guns shooting like that. But then all of a sudden, one day he starts coming in and he doesn't have any money. He's just looking around. And at some point they say, you know, we're beginning to question your reliability, because that's really
exactly right.
Isn't that about what it is? We hadn't been just showering the money, making it rain. We've been thinking about what we're doing since Trump, and they're questioning our reliability. I don't know why, but that popped in my head.
Well, you know, one of the things that kept coming up at that meeting I was at was the $38 trillion in debt, and they're making all these grand plans. And I looked around the room. I don't think many people in that room had ever been broke. I said, has anybody in this room been broke? I said, when you're broke, you can't do any of the stuff we're talking about. We're broke $3 billion a day. And the guy from the chamber says, he goes, I can't tell you how good it is to hear you talk about that. He goes, because us in the business world are threatened about that. I says, why do you think gold is at an all-time high in silver? I said, people are hedging against the dollar because they don't have a lot of faith in that. You don't have a lot of faith in the national security on an economic scale. People go away from that. Worst thing could happen is they'd go to BRICS and make that the world standard of the currency reserve and get away from the U.S. dollar. Then you would really see this dollar collapse.
Yeah, well, interesting about the dollar. I talked about it on a Friday show, which you were certainly missed, but I appreciate where you were. I don't know if you saw it, but
thanks for picking up the slack.
I was talking about, my pleasure. I was talking about Cuba and what's happening over there with the oil. And the Cuban government put out a decree about you can only buy a couple of liters of fuel, but this is the thing that jumped out at me. In Cuba, the government said you have to pay for their fuel with American dollar bills. So, I mean, wow.
Are you serious? I didn't hear that.
They actually came out, the government itself came out and said you're limited to how much fuel you can buy, and the only currency they'll accept is the Yankee dollar.
Wow, that gives you a lot of confidence in their peso down there. That country is getting ready to collapse. And you look at the policy Obama did when he tried to open up trade and embrace the communist Cuban government. Without any restrictions on there. He was opening up telecommunications, and they were suppressing the internet service over there. And, you look at the strong stance that Trump has done by going into Venezuela, blocking oil going there. They're going to be begging for us to let all pressure go. And their replacement of Castro, the president, Canal or Colon, he says that we're going to work with America, but we're not giving up our communist ideologies. You don't have a country, mister. And at some point, the people are going to rise up and they're going to want to rebuild. And when you see that change, you're going to see an influx of American Cubans going back there to rebuild that country. And they'll get back on the oil, and they will use dollars down there. But it's uncanny to me. And a disgrace that the leader of a country won't even use their own dollars anymore and tell everybody they got to use the American dollar when he despises America. I mean, that shows you how far off they are and how close they are to collapse.
Yeah, it shows you the success of communism for sure. But if you just join us, we're talking about what happened at the Munich summit, this annual summit they have, and how this article in AP is painting it that basically the U.S. limped in there, and that they basically are weakened and unreliable and that kind of thing. So this article goes on to say, but the burden with political crisis at home, talking about in the United States, our political figures are burdened by this crisis. Their entrance to the annual gathering of international leaders was more of a limp than a stride. So we limped in there, and they're painting everybody from Marco Rubio to Ocasio-Cortez with the same brush, which is unfair. But we limped into that conference. Ted, what are your thoughts on that?
That's artistic freedom for the media. I mean, those people are so out of touch and very liberal and anti-American. When you bring in somebody like Rubio, he's very clear. He's very clear-eyed of where we're going in direction. Excuse me. And then if you looked at America with these 3 videos you're going to show of AOC, Hillary, and Kamala Harris, that would be a limp, and that would be, right before they fall into the grave. And I'm glad we have people like Rubio over there.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to come back after we take a break and play those very videos that Ted just mentioned. Before we do, I just want to close out with this part before we go into break. That if you want us to go in stride, if you want to save America, if you want to help us educate, motivate, and activate people and keep this experiment we call America going, then we can play a vital part in it. But we need a team. We need all of us together. So call Freddie, make that call, become a sponsor of the show, support the cause. Ted, take us to break.
No, we're asking everybody, spread our message far and wide. If you want to be a sponsor, we sure love it. And, the point of this is to get our message out. We want to do speaking engagements and get out and talking to the young people, get them engaged, activate, motivate, or educate, activate, motivate. And we've just got to get this done with this election coming up. And when you see these videos that he plays, think about who these people are. these are the people that are going to be the leaders in the up and coming election. Two of them had already tried and failed, but their message is still out there and they think they're relevant. And other people think they're relevant. And we've got to make sure they don't ever see the light of day as far as an elected position. Take care. We'll see you in a minute.
We'll be right back.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
Right.
You just heard from the old ball coach, and Ted is in someplace in Italy. I'm jealous, but he's probably jealous of me too because I'm here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. If you've never been here before, it's in a place called Celebration Point. If you're driving down I-75 and you see that big Bass Pro, it's in that same general area. So exit there. Try out, every meal here is great. They have a brunch on Saturdays and Sundays that has become legendary. So check it out, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Well, Ted.
It does, and it's got the Gator memorabilia from all the winning teams there. And Steve Spurrier a lot of times comes through there, and you'll see the famous coach.
Absolutely.
On to you, John.
Well, Ted, when we went to break, we were talking about the Munich conference, security conference, the annual conference, where basically, as you say, it had become kind of a whining session. But now you've got a mixture of Republican and Democratic political figures going in there speaking. And this article from AP is kind of painting it that we kind of limped in there and that we're not as reliable as we once were, we being the USA. And it's implied because of the Trump administration. But I want to play for you someone, I hope you don't run into her in your travels in Europe because apparently she's over there. But this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So if you're wondering, did we limp in there? She's asked a question as if she's a presidential candidate, and what would a president, I guess in this case Ocasio-Cortez, do if Taiwan were attacked by China? Check this out.
Commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very long-standing policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Ted, it's kind of like, well, sort of like, and if I'm lost, Ted, help me out here. What do you think about that?
You can't do anything but be lost with that answer that she gave. That was a moment of brilliant deduction and foreign policy. That shows why she has no right to be on a stage like that. I mean, that's a pretty basic question about Taiwan. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but somebody like her, she's been elevated that because of the left media and the populism she has, and she's an articulate speaker, but she has no clue on a world stage, let alone really what America is. She is so wound into liberal progressive ideology that's about 30% of American population. You can't run a country that way, let alone have a credibility on the world stage. When you can't answer that question, give me a break. At
Absolutely.
Some point, if you want to ask me that question, we'll do that.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you one thing about it, Ted. I think she had a pretty good teacher when it came to word salad because I'm going to play another video. We haven't heard that much word salad since maybe this video. Check this out.
Governor and we were all doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
Somebody should come up with a drinking game where every time she says passage of time, you take a shot.
Ted, man, I tell you what, I don't know who's better at word salad, Kamala or AOC. It is really a tight comparison there, isn't it?
It sure is. You know, their problem is they don't put any protein in that. They have vegetarian salads. I don't know. They need to put some protein in there to help their brain cells out. It was Kamala Harris. Was that the one where she was talking about Russia as a big country and Ukraine's a little?
We're getting to that one.
This was the one about time, right? The time.
Yeah, the passage of time.
That was a real good one.
Yeah, the passage of time, man. I tell you what. And we're going to see one from Hillary Clinton here in a few minutes too. And all I'll say about that one before we play it in a few minutes is if you love, hate Donald Trump, whatever you want, TDS, whatever. But if you're honest with yourself, no matter what, he deserves credit for keeping Hillary and Kamala out of the Oval Office, man.
Amen to that.
If he didn't do anything else, that was a blessing to America, let alone the world. But this article goes on to say, for over 6 decades, the annual conference had gathered world leaders in pursuit of cooperation for shared security with the United States, often playing the lead role. Well, Ted, I want to tell you a quick story on that, because to me it reminds me of my Who's the Boss, the leading role. So I was at a Chinese restaurant a few years ago with my extended family. One of my sons was sitting right beside me, and the waitress came up to me when it was time to pay the bill, and she says, "Okay, who's the boss?" And everybody's like looking, and I said, "Well, what exactly does that mean?" And she says, "It means who pays the bill." So I was the boss. I didn't really like being the boss, but I was the boss. But that's basically what they look at America as. We're the boss because we pay all the bills. I mean, that's what, to me, it comes down to that. That's the disillusionment with America. There may be other things, but we're making them pay their fair share, and we're not just making it rain all the time under Donald Trump. That's the shakeup to me.
Well, you're holding people accountable. And I don't know why that's so hard to understand. And it's Europe hasn't been used to that for 60 years. About every 80 years, there's a world conflict or a major war breaks out. We're beyond that. This is the decade it should happen. And people need to, be called to task. In the country, you need to tighten up. You need to take care of your own to where you're prepared to defend yourself. You can't rely on all your neighbors, but you want to have those strong alliances where you can come together united in force against a common enemy. And like I said, had NATO been a strong organization, alliance like they were designed to be, I beg the question is, would Putin have gone into Ukraine? We certainly know if Trump was there, he even said he wouldn't have gone into Ukraine because he saw weakness with Biden and Obama and all those other things, because that's why he went into Crimea when Obama was president. And, it goes back to what we were saying before, peace through strength, walk softly, carry a big stick. There's a lot of wisdom that comes out of those things. And that's not to be the bully on the block, is just to let people know there's a border around here, or a security shield around this, and you better think twice before you cross that. And Kamala Harris doesn't exemplify that kind of strength, nor does that babbling idiot from New York.
Well, speaking of, I don't know if he's an idiot, but he's certainly babbling lately. Maybe he's been hanging out in Delaware with Joe Biden too much. But Senator Chris Coons, this is what he said over there about America's role in Europe right now. He said, I expect to have a number of challenging conversations with friends and allies about their concern and alarm about what they've seen federal law enforcement under this administration, talking about Trump, do in Minneapolis, and the attempt to indict 6 of my colleagues. He's talking about Senator Kelly, the group that said, don't follow illegal orders and all that. And he said, and other steps that, this is the part that jumped out at me, that frankly have more of the hallmarks of an authoritarian societies, in other words, dictators, than democracies. Really? Really, is that where we are, Ted? That Donald Trump is a king and authoritarian, and where you're at right now in Europe, and you travel anywhere, especially around the Mediterranean, and really anywhere in Europe, you see the results of what a dictator does. There's still ruins behind that. There's still places where your tour guide will say, this is where Jewish people used to be. That really always stood out to me. So really, I mean, are we looked at as being somehow we ask you to pay your percentage for NATO and all that is now we're dictators? Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's a terrible narrative by Chris Coons. I worked with Chris. In fact, the biggest legacy bill that I got passed was the Build Act. I didn't know what a legacy bill was, but people told me it was. He was a very good supporter of that on the Senate side, on the Democrat side. And I have seen him change because when Kamala Harris was running or Biden, he was backing Biden, and he knew how demented Biden was. And then he backed Kamala Harris. And I've lost a lot of respect for him because he's become a political hack. To build that narrative, and this is what they're doing. Trump is a dictator, the Nazi thing. He's a king. And of course, Trump plays into that because I'm going to name this, Trump that. And I think part of that he does just to irritate the left, but he also needs to be a little smarter because it is driving people away from the Republican Party. But yet to build that narrative so they can say, oh, if you're elected Republican, you're going to have authoritarian control. And the people that got killed in Minnesota, tragic accidents, they should never have happened. But they would never have happened had we had border control and we didn't have 11 to 22 million people come under the Biden-Harris administration to where we had to sort through and start getting rid of these people. They never talk about the people that got killed by these illegals and what a travesty of justice that is, that they overlook that and they bring it down to where Trump is trying to follow the rule of law and get it back into some kind of semblance of law and order. They ignore that. And it's all about, oh, look at him. He's being a dictator. Well, unfortunately, these things need to happen. They're ugly. And had those people not been there protesting, they would have been shot. And had Biden and Harris not let those people in, they wouldn't have been here to have to be picked up. This is something that's going to go on because Europe is seeing that. Like I said, the people that are picking the grapes in Italy, there's a lot of immigrants and they're not assimilating, and they're going to have the same problem in this country. If you get over to England and Belgium, it's a mess over there. I mean, there is no host country like it used to be, the UK or Belgium. You don't even recognize them anymore. And that's what they want to do in America, and it's not going to be acceptable.
Well, I don't know how much news it made over there where you're at in Italy, but the Italian prime minister just started a naval blockade in Italy over the last couple of days.
He did.
Because trying to stop the immigrants from coming in. They're pouring in by the boatload. So they're addressing that. We talked a little bit last week about, the policy in Spain of just this mass amnesty. Well, they're rethinking that. And like Switzerland, I talked about this on last Friday's show. Switzerland is about to vote on a referendum to limit their population to 10 million people because they're being overwhelmed by illegal immigrants. And that's so Europe is beginning to react to this.
And in all these countries, this is like I brought up about the immigrants coming here. They don't assimilate, and then you get the rapes, the murders, the crimes, the thefts. You get all of that, and these countries are waking up to that. They are not going to tolerate that. And the way you don't tolerate it is a lot of times it's ugly. I mean, what we're doing in America, people want to chastise us and say how bad and how violent we are and unfair. But it gets to the point where civil wars will break out and they'll expunge people and the strongest will survive. And it'll come down to national identity and what you believe in. That's not to say, like in our country, you've got to be an American citizen. You have to have American values, the core principles, our founding values, and believe in the Constitution that holds that all together. And you will accept all people, but you have to assimilate and become Americans. I mean, that's been the standard for 200 years. And why they want to change it now. And if these people like the AOCs and the Hillarys, if they want to change it, it was set up in the Constitution where you can change it by changing the Constitution, which requires certain votes, a certain percentage of votes by the states. And, that would be the way to do it. You don't do it by hook and crook like these people are doing, and then use your media, the legacy media and the liberal press, along with Chinese money. And I think we talked about this last time. There is more Chinese money coming into our nation in these campaigns than people realize, because their goal is to bring America down without firing a shot. And they're doing it. We need to wake up and, realize what the real threat is.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that really bugged me the most about what Mr. Coons said over there in Europe is he's implying that the country would be better off if we had a different president, if President Trump wasn't there. That's what, to me, he's implying. Well, I want to play this video. This is Kamala Harris. It was a radio interview back a few years ago when she was asked about Ukraine. So there's not really any actual video. It's just a placard with a voice. But this is the person, if Donald Trump wasn't president, this would be our president right now. Check this out.
You're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing everything that's going on right now in the Ukraine. Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Ted, I don't know what. That's Kamala Harris, who Mr. Coons is implying would be a better president, and Europe would be better, America would be better if she were in there. So I can see her at this conference going, Ukraine is a country in Europe that next to a bigger. Ted, help me.
And she was talking to school children, and I'm wondering, these kids are thinking, wow, I want to be just like her when I grow up. Or they're saying, that lady is ignorant as a rock. That couldn't have been done better had it been a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, those things in AOC, you go back to AOC, that was like Ted Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, why do you want to be president? and he just kind of froze, like, and I've had moments like that. I think we all have. But when you're on the world stage and they're asking you foreign policy about Taiwan, and you want to say, well, we make sure we stay in the research and, check the weather and, worry about climate change, because that's really an existential threat. Anyways, you know what? Trump came up in our conversation when I was at Bellagio a lot. And there really is a Trump derangement syndrome on those people on the left. And they are kind of wanting to bash him. I said, wait a minute. Trump is but a symptom. This guy was from Germany. He was on that panel. And you could tell he was an anti-Trumper. And I told him, I says, you got to understand, Trump is but a symptom of an underlying problem. That underlying problem is, if you go back to the Tea Party in 2010, there was a massive outrage of what was going on in the country. There was no national leader. There was no political organization that coordinated everything. It was a grassroots movement that says, we don't feel right about America. It's going in the wrong direction. And that is what gave rise to Trump. He is in the process of correcting that. And the people on the other side, they will not relent. They will not back off. They're going to run harder in the next elections. That's why our job is to educate, motivate, and activate, John. And that's why we've got to get this message out.
Absolutely. Well, when you were talking about Ted Kennedy, the simplest answer of why he wants to be president should have been so I don't have to drive, because women would be a lot safer if I didn't drive. But
well, there's other people like him that have said, well, it's family business. Seriously, that's why, you just think you're entitled to that. That's a kingdom. That's fiefdom, and they think they're privileged, so they should stay in office. No, you shouldn't. You need to earn it every day.
But I want to play another AOC video, because what if
You're killing me, John. You're killing me.
We heard her word salad about, it's interesting, her word salad, because the word salad about Taiwan, but she made a very specific answer to whether or not the next American president should befriend Israel. Let's play it. We'll come back and talk about it.
It enabled a genocide in Gaza. And I think that we have thousands of women and children dead that was completely avoidable. And so I believe that enforcement of our own laws through the Leahy laws, which requires conditioning aid in any circumstance when you see gross human rights violations, is appropriate.
Ambassador, you want to jump in on that?
No.
So she's sitting there talking about genocide. And now I'm not saying that Israel is always right, Ted, but to think that they're in a situation there where they're literally surrounded by people that would want to wipe them off the map. And keep in mind, jihad and the intifada means wiping all non-believers off the map. And they always say death to, Israel and death to America. Okay.
Death to the infidels.
I'm not condoning everything that Israel does, but the idea that we would stop supporting them, that would improve what?
Who's going to counter the radical Muslims over there if Israel doesn't? There's got to be a check and balance on that. There's so much to talk about on that. You got to go back to our founding principles. We're a Judeo-Christian country. I don't see Judeo-Islamic Christian country. It's a Judeo-Christian country. And so Israel's been there. They're like a little brother of ours. There's a lot of mutual benefits. Yeah, we give them money for military protection, but the return we get in military assets and engineering and things like that and computer programming, there is a good trade-off there. And keep in mind who attacked Israel and did those heinous crimes back in, 3 years ago? Yeah, when they went into Israel?
Yeah.
And you've seen the pictures out there. How many times have we seen that video of the prisoners that were in the tunnels digging their own graves that were emaciated, and they hardly could pick up a shovel. And so when a country attacks another country with that much brutality, I don't think there's a wrong thing about annihilating them. And this is not something new, John. I'm reading a book. It's called The Two Swords of Christ. I think you've heard me talk about this. This has been going on since Muhammad came on the scene. His troops were going out annihilating Christians and non-believers by the thousands. And then the Templars, Knights Templars came up and the Hospitallers came up, and they had to fight that back. And so this has been something that's been going on for over 1,000 years, and it's still going on. And what's going to bring it to an end is strong leadership and strong borders, and you stay on your side and I'll stay on my side, and we'll respect our differences and we'll work together where we can. The nonsense that she's talking about, she doesn't have a clue about foreign policy, obviously. And, and Kamala Harris, let's hope they run her again. I think that's the best thing we can hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what you were just talking about, that whole framework, Rubio, if you haven't seen, I'm not going to play any snippets of it because it's too good just to play a snippet. Do yourself a favor and watch Marco Rubio's 10 or 15-minute speech at this conference, because it was extraordinary. But one line stood out to me, Ted, because basically I think it explains why we're doing this show. because he made the statement, and I'm paraphrasing a bit. He's talking about America. He said, we are not going to sit idly by or passively by and watch manage. He said, manage the slow decline of America. Because really, Ted, that's what both sides have been doing for the last my lifetime, for the most part, is managing the slide of America. And what's so controversial about Donald Trump, he's trying to stop the slide and reverse it, in my view. And that's what we're trying to do with this show. That's why you need to call Freddie, make that call, support the cause. Let's not only stop the slide, but let's try to turn it around. Let's don't just passively sit by and go, my life is good. It may suck down the road for my grandchildren, but right now I don't want to rock the boat. I think that's what Rubio was saying.
Well, that's what complacency does. And that's what happened to the Weimar Republic in Germany. People were complacent. And then they're like, well, I don't want to be bothered. There's a soccer game or this and that. I don't want to be bothered. And that's how they got Adolf Hitler in there. And, you can't let your guard down on this. So you can't rely on the next generation to fix this. This is our call to duty. And this is why we've got to this is not a game. This is about a way of life that has been going on for 250 years in this country. And it is built on failed empires of the past, from the Greeks to the Romans, to the Magna Carta, to the Mayflower Compact. All these things have been built successively in succession on each other. And that has given us a system of what we have. And it's like Reagan said, we're but one election away of losing that. And I don't think anybody really wants to lose that. And if you don't think that's in jeopardy, look around the world. Look at how you have the Chinese era going on. You have what's going on in Ukraine. Over 1 million people have been killed in Ukraine because they did not respect the rule of law and the societies that were there. They wanted to take them over. And this will not continue, or this will continue to deteriorate without a strong American and a strong NATO ally.
Well, I want to play one more video of a would-be president. This is Hillary Clinton. She's over there at this conference. She's doing a side little at a women's conference that's an auxiliary, I suppose, of this Munich conference. But and unlike Marco's deal, hers was over an hour and none of it's really worth watching. But I want to give you a very quick snippet about this women's conference now. Check this out.
Notably, the laws against domestic violence. So this is a well-funded, well-structured campaign that is then weaponized for political purposes, primarily on the far-right populist front. I want to turn to someone who's been involved in this work for a long time in trying to explain and truly bring people together around issues of gender, and that's Sarah McBride, U.S. Congresswoman from the state of Delaware.
Well, Ted,
as a gender rights
this is a women's
champion,
conference. She's introducing the representative, Sarah McBride. There's only one teeny, or maybe it's not so teeny, I don't know, problem with that at a women's conference. And I'll turn that to you, Ted. What is the problem?
I have met Mr. McBride, and he is not a woman. And John, again, this could be a Saturday Night Live skit, and it should be. It would be funny if it wasn't true. It's a women's conference about empowering women. Now, this is something that came up in my conference. The DEI wokeism is gone. It is gone. And they even talked about it. It went too far. It's not going to work. We need to get away from it. Did I freeze up? Are you there?
No, you're there.
Am I back?
Doing good.
All right. So keep that in mind. She's at a women's conference, and she says this whole push about getting away from gender equality. She puts women in there, but it's more about gender equality and DEI. And as we know, Ward used to say, diversity, equity, and inclusion. people want to get away from that. And so her whole thing, she makes it about women, but it's really about diversity. And then you talk about a slap in the face of women to bring somebody out to speak at a women's conference who is a transgender. I mean, that to me is the ultimate slap in the face. And they don't see the hypocrisy of that or the lunacy of it. It's a disgrace. And she has to understand it. The DEI and wokeism is gone. And that's what they're saying. Oh, we've got to get this back. People rejected that, not just in this country, but other countries. And, again, that's why the Munich Security Conference has become kind of a joke, and a lot of people aren't going to it. And I think you're going to see it decrease in stature as it already has. And, thank God again that she was not elected our president. Had it not been for Donald Trump, she would have been our president. Had it not been for Donald Trump, Kamala Harris would have been our president. Had it not been for Donald Trump, Merrick Garland would have been a Supreme Court justice. That was really Mitch McConnell. And you can imagine the direction of this country. It would be unrecognizable today. We would be, 10 years, they would look back at America and we would be that failed dynasty or empire. I don't want to use the word empire because the people be thinking of kings, but that era of greatness, and America would be on the downslide of that. So, like him or not, thank God he's there. He's the person that needs to be there at this point in time in our history.
Yeah. Well, I want to we only got about 5 minutes left, so I want to hit a kind of rapid fire, some quick topics here. Because the one thing, every time I turn on like liberal radio or TV, all they're talking about is Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. I just want to make a statement on that, and you can comment on it, move on. I'm not saying that Trump, they should just release all the files. I'm not saying that Trump is not capable potentially of covering up something, but if it is, it's not about him. And the reason I say that is because they've had these files for a decade now, or longer. If Trump were in them, do you not think that they would have leaked all of that stuff by now from Obama's administration to Biden's administration? Tell me where I'm wrong, Ted, on that.
You're not, John. I mean, that's the thing. They're making such a big deal out of this. And, Thomas Massey is a friend of mine. Ro Kahana, I know. He's just a liberal, progressive, way on. He's up there with AOC. And they're making such a big deal out of this. Who's worried about the $38 trillion in debt? Who's worried about, countering China? Who's worried about improving our education where our kids can read when they graduate from high school? It really is not about Epstein. And these people are so fixated on this. Thomas Massey's gone off the rails on this, because he's in this personal war with Trump, and none of it matters, Thomas. Get off of the soapbox with that. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she wants to weigh in on this. Give me a break. Why don't you spend your time on our debt, on countering China, on bolstering the strength of America, working on making laws to assimilate people in America that are going to be here, the voter ID law, and they're all doing these sideshows, and it's a clown show up there. It really is, John. And that's, I'm glad when I go up there, I'm only up there for a day or two and come home, because you can't wash that stuff off.
Well, you talk about a clown show. So we're going to end the show with a video here. And this you want to talk about something that I'm tired of. People, if Europeans over there that have any level of intelligence at all, regardless of their politics, they got to look at this and be absolutely sick to death of it. This is at an ICE hearing this past week when this congresswoman actually is interviewing the head of ICE. Listen to the questions she asked, Ted, and we'll come back and let you close out the show.
She was asking
and you don't
seem
to care. Mr. Lyons, do you consider yourself a religious man?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, how do you think Judgment Day will work for you with so much blood on your hands?
I'm not going to entertain that question.
Oh, okay, of course not. Do you think you're going to hell, Mr. Lyons?
I'm not going to entertain.
Of course not. How many government...
The gentlelady will suspend. The gentlelady will suspend.
Chairman?
A gentlelady will suspend. The witnesses are here voluntarily. And I will continue to remind members that while oversight is important, aggressively attacking those witnesses personally is inappropriate and not in keeping.
That's a clown show.
Good Lord. Good. Take us out with this one, Ted. Go ahead.
I think the best thing is saying, you know what? We're not going to show any more videos of her. I mean, it is such a joke. You know, I would love for him to say, well, why do we have to have ICE up there anyways? Was it the last administration lack of enforcement on our borders that caused this? And this is what you get when you don't enforce the laws. But somebody like her, she's just trying to be impactful on her YouTube website or whatever. She's looking at her likes and be an influencer. But she truly is not somebody that should be in the U.S. Congress. They're not working on a plan. They're just trying to embarrass somebody and call out failed policies of the administration that she supported. You know how the English used to go around and say, God save the Queen. It's like, God save America. You know, right now we're at that point in time and people need to wake up. The life that you and I experience, John, is in jeopardy. And you've heard me talk about that book before, Chris Stewart's The Miracle of Freedom. 4.5% of all the people have ever lived through the liberties and freedoms we have. And when you have people like her and AOC and Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, and the list goes on, running this country, you can see the jeopardy we're in. I hope America wakes up and are like, throw these people out. Let's get back and fix the basic problems to make this country strong for decades, if not centuries to come, is what we should focus on. Again, I'm in Verona, Italy. There's a Colosseum that was built 2,000 years ago. It's probably had very little maintenance, but the basic foundational structures were strong enough at the time that it survived way beyond their culture did. What we want to make sure is our culture, that it was built on the foundational principles, way survives us. So it's 2,000 years in the future and our principles are still standing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share it far and wide, join the calls, call that number, call Freddie, you'll see up there. And, have a blessed day. Have a great rest of your trip, Ted.
On Thursday, and hopefully I'll see you continue the show. There's a lot to talk about. And get involved with your local politics, with your watching the elections that are coming up. Get involved helping candidates, the ones you believe in, ask them the hard questions, and let's make this a better country. Y'all take care, John. We'll see you Friday.
Peace out, everybody.